Hey everybody, welcome back to another anime review. Tonight is one of my Patreon requests by my good friend J Chip from the J Chip Show, who has a channel himself. You should check him out most definitely. And it took me a while to wrap up this series, but I'm really glad that I finally did. And I know from the get go, this video might piss some people off because this is a very beloved show, and I don't plan on sitting here and just listing off all of the good things. I'm going to talk about what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and everything. And that is 2009's Bakemonogatari. Now, I'm really, really, really late to the party on this. This is an ongoing franchise, or at least a franchise that spawned like several seasons based on um, light novels, I believe, by Niseo Isin. I believe I'm saying that correctly. It's like a pen name. Uh, and this is like this was the first anime installment. I don't know how this fits chronologically with the overall story and everything. Um, but this was the first anime, I believe, and I think that it is an interesting series overall. I think it. I could certainly see why it has its fan base, um, but there are reasons why it did take me so long to kind of get through this. But above all, this series is certainly unique and special, I think, and I definitely see a purpose in anime that are this unique and this special and are just flat out something that there isn't anything else really like, at least that I've seen. Um, and so, like, even if it might have some things that are I find not so great, it does have other things that are amazing. And it is certainly a different experience that I think a lot of people should at least try out. So I'm sort of walking on eggshells with this. Admittedly, I will you know talk about some of the negatives later on in this video. But I'd like to start out with like what I did like, and I guess like first and foremost, the concept is very very interesting. You basically have this former is he like a former half vampire if I have that right, Araragi, who is our main guy, and the story is basically him solving issues with oddities, as they call them, basically supernatural influences on everyday life, particularly people that he happens to know or comes in contact with throughout the series. Um, Him being a sort of an oddity within himself, or at least a former oddity. He has connections to this sort of like underground world, and he always like attempts to sort of like alleviate situations. What's interesting is a lot of the time he is sort of I don't know if I want to say like powerless to really change things. A lot of the time it is him sort of getting the person involved into the right position, the right place for them to sort of figure it out on their own, which I did find very interesting about the series. It's not really like he's not like an Araragi as a character. I mean, he's not like perfection incarnate. Like he's not this thing. He's not this guy that is going to just defeat every evil and whisk away all the problems of the world, because that's not like realistic. And I know like we're talking about a show with like vampires and spirits and monkey paws and cat girls and all this stuff. But I did like how it is, at least he is always trying to like find sort of the good thing to do, realizing his own flaws and sort of like coming to terms or trying to help people to come to terms with the events that are happening to them and the situations that they find themselves in. So I think he's kind of a unique main character in that regard. He's definitely very like intriguing. He's also like a little bit of annoying, but we'll get into that in a moment. But yeah, I think like conceptually the show is fantastic. It's got a few different story arcs here within its 15 episode run that basically go over different women and girls in Araragi's life that are dealing with some sort of supernatural oddity or circumstance happening to them or something like that, and them sort of dealing with that situation. Uh, and yeah, I really loved the presentation of this. It is, especially for 2009, this show looks awesome. This is, I believe, Shaft, and directed by the great Akiyuki Shinbo. So kind of no surprises there that this is visually not only like beautiful, but also a lot of interesting sort of like camera angles and stuff going on with this. If you've seen March Comes in Like a Lion, this has some of like those shots like on steroids. Like obviously this came first, but this a lot of like the infamous head tilts and just the close-ups on the eyes and everything scattered throughout this. It's also got a bunch of like random images of like text on the screen, like I'm assuming from the novels. That I'm gonna be honest with you, and people might hate from this. I didn't pause it to read all of these. I read what I could. I did find that kind of annoying that they just keep doing that on the screen. I don't know why that's there, but a lot of like monologue type things or just like weird moments within the series will have like lines typed onto this like literally just displayed on the screen like really really fast. And it's peculiar, but it's memorable. It is, because I said it is unique. It is unique, sort of in terms of its premise and in terms of its visuals. Music was pretty cool. You get like a different OP with each story arc, if I remember correctly. I kind of liked the final OP from the one with the cats. I don't want to spoil like too much of what goes on. And the first OP is also, I believe, pretty good. They kind of sort of mirror like arcs that I like within the series, because I really really like that first arc, and I was very very fond of the end of this series, and sort of a mixed bag in the middle. But and I had to mention this: the ending theme, I believe by Supercell, is awesome. It is one of my favorite EDs now of all time. It is so, I listen to that ED like almost every episode. And this is a series that took me some time to get through, and I'm kind of glad that I did, because I got to like, I'll watch like one or two episodes, then wait a few days, and then watch some again. And I got to hear that awesome ED over and over again. It's talk about the constellations and stuff like that, Vega and all of them, and it's just really cool, like catchy song, and a really cool way I think to end every episode. Definitely one of my favorite EDs. That one knocked it out of the park right there. It's also like visually really cool. Like it has like this sort of like very grainy art style to it that I particularly enjoyed. And another thing, the final thing that I want to mention that I really really liked is its growth. Not in terms of like story and characterization, because like initially, like I said, I thought it was kind of dull and boring, and I didn't really attach to a lot of the characters at first. But by the end of episode 15, my thoughts on particular characters had very much changed, and the characters that I sort of liked at the beginning, I ended up really liking. And there really weren't complaints that I had early on were kind of like nullified in terms of its characters by the end, pretty much. And I like how the story, well, it did have different like sort of not really episodic, but like isolated sort of like sections. They're sort of like tied together within Araragi's life, and I like that how that balances with his like relationships as he develops them in the series and stuff like that. So it's a very interesting series to like when you complete episode 15 to like go back and think of the events that you previously saw. And while those might have seemed dull at the time, you look back and say like, oh wow, I see what they were piecing together here. And so it makes it like a very interesting like structure as a whole once you see it completed. And that's just this first 15 episode thing. And I'm sure it's like that later on because I know very little about the franchise as a whole. So like I said, all I can talk about is what I know here. And I guess we'll talk about particular characters that I really enjoyed. I mentioned Araragi. Everyone's gonna want me to talk about Sanjogahara, and I'll say this: at the end of episode 15, or I think even like a couple episodes before that, I had a big switcheroo in my head about this character, and the thing is that early on I was not very into her, and as a whole, there is another female character that I personally like a lot more in the show, but Sanjogahara is, iconic waifu material for a lot of people. Quite tsundere incarnate. She's like the first girl that Araragi is helping out with a particular oddity, and grows to have a relationship with him and stuff like that. And a lot of the series is just conversation, and I understand that might annoy some people, but Sanjogahara's personality kind of makes it more interesting. She has a really interesting voice, and just way that she sort of talks to Araragi and everybody. At first it sort of got on my nerves with how she just sort of played along with him and sort of seemingly like to jokingly torture him and stuff like that. I just kind of thought it was like the same joke over and over again. I guess I don't know. I wasn't super into her at the start. Then there's an episode later on in the series. Don't want to spoil too much, but you find out more about her, and she actually sort of opens up more about herself. And when that happened, I completely flipped on this character. Like I sort of like wrote off the problems that I had with her. I still think that I still particularly like Hanakawa better. I think Hanakawa is best girl of the show, and she's just so kind and always like helpful toward Araragi. And not that Sanjogahara isn't like. She's very, very helpful toward him in parts of the series, but I do think that Hanakawa, I personally like Hanakawa better, but I kind of do see that like, Sanjogahara should probably be best girl for Araragi. I think that makes sense in the series, but if this was, Miasma Monogatari, I would want it to be Hanakawa as best girl. But yeah, another character that I definitely enjoyed was Oshino. He's this guy that helps out Araragi with like Araragi always goes to him with questions about the oddities and so forth. He's a very mysterious dude. Don't know a ton about him, but he's always like really like laid back, relaxed, even though like chaotic stuff is happening. And he even when he delivers like bad news, like describing how things are going to be harder than you think to actually fix them, he's always sort of like laid back and funny. Has interesting banter with the main character. I like that a lot. Okay, so I've praised it for like 14 minutes here. I gotta talk about what I didn't like about the series. And that is, I mentioned it's sort of like dullness, but there is so much talking And I get it. That's what it's supposed to be. It's about dialogue. It's about wordplay. Even the title of the series, Bakemonogatari, is wordplay with bakemono meaning monster and monogatari being story, I believe. I get that. That might be really cool in like a novel, but in an anime, like there's like whole episodes of like it'll have like Sanjogahara and Araragi like sitting in a park, just like talking, and that's like 19 of the 20 minutes, and I'm like, whoa, that's awesome that these shots look so good, but like they kind of look so good because you didn't really have to animate a whole lot in this episode, and it's just kind of boring in a sense. Like, trust me, there are like actiony cool segments of the series, but it's I don't really write it as, I don't think it's like meant to be this big like action piece. I think it's about the characters and the dialogue, but I just couldn't really attach to the conversations a lot of the time, and that was kind of an issue that I had with it the whole way. Even with characters that I like enjoyed, even like really like conversations between Hanakawa, who I love, and Araragi, it's just kind of like did they really like go anywhere? It's sort of like another issue that I have is, I mentioned Araragi is like a helper, right? And he's seeking to help them, and a lot of the time it is interesting that like he isn't really the one doing the action to help these people that are afflicted by oddities and so forth. Some of it is stuff that's brought on, that they're bringing on to themselves, or there's a factor in their life that they probably should change or something like that, that is causing them to go through these unfortunate events. And Araragi just kind of happened to be the catalyst for them making that change. Some of them, it's just like, did he like, was the change like that like huge and like important, and it kind of, some of it like it's just like they kind of just, it just like, that's where we're going to be. Hanakawa's story is the one that sticks out to me, the final one that really happens in the series. I didn't find her story arc really like alleviated. It just kind of like, it's kind of, okay, we're all right for now. We'll just handle this later. It seems very procrastinated, and maybe that happens. I'm sure that probably comes in later on. But for this particular series, I just kind of thought that was like okay. Even the one with like the monkey paw, the basketball girl. Uh, it's like something happens to her, and she has to make this sort of like change afterward, and she can no longer do this fairly important thing. What was this fairly important thing in her life? And I was like, well, that kind of sucks, I guess. Like, I guess that there's lessons to be learned from each of these experiences, and probably things that I didn't even capture myself. But at the end of the day, with none of these lessons was I ever like, wow, holy shit, my life is now, I view things way differently, right? Like, I never got that from any of these lessons. Maybe that wasn't the goal, but I just don't think any of them were that like deep and thought provoking that that the end result made me like change my outlook, my worldview on things. I do think that they were also very imbalanced. I mentioned that I really like Sanjogahara's story, the story with the crab, and the Hanakawa story at the end. But some of the other ones, just like the snake girl, oh my god. The snake girl and the snail girl, I really didn't like those parts so much. That's when I think the series like really, really dragged. More so with the snake. I could forgive the snail a little bit. The snail was kind of funny some of the time. But the snake girl, like, was there like a point for that to be here that I just wasn't understanding? Like, she doesn't, I don't think she adds a whole lot to the series. I don't think the events that took place really were that huge. Maybe they lay that out like later on, but I don't know. I just thought that part was kind of forgettable. Snail Girl, she's okay. She kind of leads into another problem that I have in this, is there's a lot of fan service here, and I know some people like it. I'm not a huge fan, and I kind of understand that their point is sort of to display that Araragi is sort of perverted, which is kind of funny, but it's just kind of awkward when he's like going to grab the little, I think it's Mayoi is her name, the little snail girl, and he like grabs her little girl chest and everything, and it's really really weird and off-putting in my opinion. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of like weird fan service of just like you'll have Sanjogahara walking around with like no clothes on and stuff like that. And I mean, a lot of people are going to like that. I understand. I am probably the minority opinion on that. I just think it kind of holds the series back in a way. I feel like if this was more serious, I think then it would be I don't know. It might be like easier to consume. I feel like the fan service is sort of like a hurdle in an already fairly hard race to be running in, if that makes sense. Like this series is you're already very like dialogue heavy. You're already very like Japanese wordplay heavy that a lot of English speakers aren't going to like understand and stuff like that. There's a lot of these like little nuances that idiots like me aren't going to notice, but we are going to notice weird, uncomfortable fan service scenes with like a little girl that is very distracting to the overall experience, in my opinion. And I was not a big fan of that. But yeah, I think that's about it for stuff that I really, really didn't like. Um, it's it's a truly unique experience, Bakemonogatari. There's definitely not really other anime like it besides, I'm assuming, other stuff within its franchise. I am super grateful that J-Chip recommended this to me, and I'm sorry that it took so very long, because honestly, at the end of episode 15, I was really kicking myself in my ass for not just powering through these. Like, I staggered these episodes out there when I kind of got bored in the middle episodes, and overall, it's an enjoyable experience. It's definitely an enjoyable anime that I feel like if you haven't seen it, and if you've seen nothing of the franchise, you should definitely check this out. Because I kind of think that it's sort of important enough in the medium of anime that you shouldn't miss it. Like you don't have to be like deep into the fan base, but I think that you should at least maybe see the roots of it here. Maybe you should just at least check out this series, and if it's not necessarily for you, which I kind of am sort of leaning towards actually, I don't think I'm going to watch other parts of the series. Maybe. Definitely not like immediately. And they could always be requested of me, but I don't know. I don't think so. I would love to talk about this more with my friends like Dread and J-Chip, because they both love this franchise to death. And I'm sure can correct me on 1,000 things I was wrong on in this video. But I do think that this is definitely a stream-worthy show. In my super unofficial rating system, I definitely don't think you should avoid this. I wouldn't go as far as say buy this immediately. It's also crazy expensive on Blu-ray, I believe. So if you can stream this somewhere, watch it. Check it out. You know, it's only 15 episodes. It's not too bad. Maybe you do have to break it up with its insane amounts of dialogue and everything like that, because it is a lot to handle. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think maybe we need some more shows that are a lot to handle when we keep, repeating some of the same tropes in a lot of other shows and seeing the same shonen every single season, the same isekai shows in every single season. This is definitely a breath of fresh air for anime. So that's what I thought about Bakemonogatari. I apologize to anybody who I pissed off, who've already definitely typed that I'm stupid and I don't know what I'm talking about and I'm really wrong and I'm extra stupid. But J-Chip, honestly, thank you for recommending me this. I I would like to learn some more about this maybe before I go into any other series and so forth. But yeah, if you've seen Bakemono, what did you Bakemonogatari? Have you? Let me know what you thought down below. Please try to avoid like spoilers. For people that have not seen it. I'm curious, who do you think was best girl in Bakemonogatari? Because I kind of feel like that's an interesting question in this series, considering 100% of the people that Araragi helps are female. I noticed that. Interesting. But yeah, I do have a Patreon. I'll link that in the description box below if you'd like me help me out there. At the very least, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It really would help a lot. The channel's been growing at a relatively good rate lately, and I want to keep that going. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. My name is Miasma, and I'll see you next time.